Hi there, my name is Aisha and I am a wellness counselor. Over my years of work, I have seen how often employees ignore the early signs of stress. But today, we're going to slow that down. I will walk you through how to spot stress early on and how to emotionally regulate yourself before it leads to burnout or emotional exhaustion. Stress signals you should not ignore. I want to start by saying this. Most people don't suddenly burn out, they gradually override themselves. Stress doesn't usually arrive loudly, it builds up quietly. Especially around this time of year, March is an interesting month. The energy of the new year has worn off. The goals are no longer exciting, they become demanding. Targets feel real. Workload feels heavier, and there's often this internal pressure that says, I should be further by now. So we start pushing, and we don't notice what it's costing us. Misconceptions about stress. When we talk about stress, people often imagine something obvious: panic attacks, breakdowns, crying at work. But in reality, stress begins in much smaller ways. Stress starts in the body. It begins in the body. You might be sitting at your desk and not realize that your jaw is clenched. Your shoulders are slightly lifted. Your breathing is shallow and sitting high in your chest. You feel wired but tired at the same time. That is not random, and that is not something for you to ignore. That's your nervous system responding to pressure. The body does not differentiate much between emotional pressure and physical threat. Deadlines, performance expectations, constant notifications, the nervous system reads that as activation, so it prepares you to deal with it. Activation can be helpful. In small doses, that's helpful. It sharpens your focus, it increases your productivity. But when that activation doesn't switch off, when you move from one demand to the next without recovery, it starts to accumulate, and that's where the problems start. Early emotional signals. Another early signal is irritability. Not extreme anger, but just shorter patience, less tolerance. Small things feel disproportionately annoying. Emails feel intrusive. Conversations start feeling draining. Many people dismiss this and say, I'm just busy and I'm just overworked. But irritability is often an early sign of overload. When your system is stretched so thin, your margin begins to shrink. Cognitive signs of stress. Then there are the cognitive signs. You might notice your thinking becomes more rigid, more urgent, more black and white. Everything feels important. You struggle to prioritize because everything feels urgent and like a threat. You find it harder to concentrate. You reread the same sentence 3 times. You procrastinate, not because you're lazy, but because your brain is overloaded. Stress narrows your perception. It moves you into survival efficiency rather than thoughtful strategy. And if you live in that state long enough, your baseline begins to shift. What used to feel like busy starts to feel normal. That's why early awareness matters, because stress becomes harmful not when it appears, but when it accumulates without being helped. So what do we do during demanding workdays, especially in months like March when pressure tends to peak? Firstly, we stop waiting for a crisis to justify care. You don't need to be falling apart to reset your nervous system. You can regulate preventatively and consistently. Step 1. Start with breathing. One of the simplest and most effective tools is breathing, but not in a dramatic way, just intentional slowing down. When you notice tension, pause for 1 minute. Inhale slowly through your nose. Hold for a few seconds, then make your exhale longer than your inhale. That longer exhale safely suggests to your body that you are fine. It begins to bring your system out of fight or flight mode. Do it between your meetings, do it in the bathroom, do it in your car before driving home, but do it and stay consistent. Step 2. Release your physical tension. Being able to pay attention to where it physically hurts and to recognize your physical tension patterns. Unclench your jaw, drop your shoulders, relax your hands. These sound small, but the brain constantly reads signals from the body. When the body softens, the brain tends to follow. Thirdly, create micro boundaries, not dramatic ones, just small protective pauses. Close your laptop fully during lunch. Step outside for 5 minutes without your phone. Decide on a cutoff time in the evening where you stop solving work problems in your head. The nervous system needs closure cues. Without them, it stays partially activated. Another important signal to watch is emotional detachment. If you notice yourself saying, "I just don't care anymore," that's significant. That's not laziness, but that's your depletion talking. When meaning starts draining out of work that once mattered to you, that's often a deeper stress signal. The goal is not to eliminate your stress. That is unrealistic. Work will have demanding seasons. The goal is rhythm, activation, then recovery, effort, and restoration. When that rhythm disappears, that's when stress escalates into something more serious. During this month of March, I encourage you to ask yourself 3 simple questions throughout the day. What is my body doing right now? What is my energy like actually? What would help me reset for 5 minutes? Not overhaul, not escape, but just reset. Stress is manageable when it moves through you. It becomes harmful when it stays stuck. And finally, don't wait until you're exhausted to seek support. Early conversations, whether through an EAP program or counseling, can prevent months of recovery later. It is much easier to recalibrate mild overload than to rebuild after collapse. If there's one thing I want you to take from this, it's this. Stress whispers before it screams. Learn to hear the whisper. When you respond early, calmly, consistently, you protect not just your productivity, but your well-being. And that is always worth protecting.